Everybody, this is me, Pat Windrow at the Cable Easel, back live for the first time since November, and I hope that you all telephone me and talk to me a little bit so that I know that you're still out there. And I understand that there's a lot more of you out there than there was before, because now a new bunch of channels have gotten onto the system, and I understand that we are spreading our tentacles far and wide. So if you call, I hope it's from far, far away so that we can find out whether or not your reception's any good and whether or not you like what's happening here. And so as long as I'm going to tell you about the local origination tonight is from Port Jefferson Harbor, and you may or may not be familiar with the fact that something happened in Port Jefferson Harbor last October, which you're going to see. And I'm glad to say that I can report this live. I think it's been in the papers with still photography, and I think that it's been in the newspapers. And in the magazines and so forth and so on, but I don't think it's been on television. And here it is. It is a rather extraordinary piece of sculpture, which is now living in Port Jefferson Harbor for a number of months, and I can tell you about it as I go along. It's a wonderful piece. It really is, and it's so arresting that anybody who has a moment should really drive up to the harbor at Port Jefferson, either coming from the east or from the west, to see this 4-story high piece of sculpture, which is called in some joking way, Big Bird. Actually, what it is a absolutely beautiful, ethereal heron, a great heron. And it was done by an artist, and I shall tell you about him as soon as we get farther on into the program. But I think the best thing to do is to tell you about where it is. And if you know the area at all, you know that Port Jefferson is one of the major ports on the north shore of Long Island. And here we are going to pay homage to this wonderful piece, because it isn't very often that the island gets something as handsome as this in a public place. These things find their way into museums, but they're not always available to the general public. So I'm going to begin by laying out the general plan. It's a very simple composition, except that it has this remarkable motif right in the middle of it. The simple plan is that there is a landmass way down in the composition, and I put the canvas vertically because of the need to make the emphasis of this wonderful looking piece of sculpture. Just to lay it out very simply, and don't forget to call me, well, the phone number is going to be projected on your screen any moment now. 348-6800, I believe, is the number. Yes, there it is. And call me, and we can talk, chat, and do whatever. But in the meantime, let's talk about the luck which the residents of the North Shore of Long Island, and all of Long Island for that matter, have in being able to view this piece of work. Many times you have to travel many hundreds of thousands of miles. But here it is, right in your own area. The composition kind of takes care of itself. As you see it on the monitor, and we did a tape of this today in this crystal clear, beautiful winter day, which happens sometimes, and when it does, you realize that this is why we live here, so that we can receive the wonderful elements of this month, this January month in the middle of wintertime, and doing such wonderful things for the area. The wind was calm, or it was slightly agitated today. The water was as blue as as a sapphire, and the sky was totally cloudless. So here I have the beginning of an extremely simple composition, namely the vertical, which is the bird, and the horizontal, which is the landmass, and that slight, nice, very cooperative and compositionally acceptable diagonal. The rest of it is going to be almost like a poster. So here, and if you want to be oriented as to where exactly this is a spit of land which is called in the native tongue here Mount Misery. I do not know the root of that term, but that's what it's called. And there is a nice dune over here to the left of this canvas, and beyond that is the water, beyond that is Long Island Sound, and then if you keep going, you'll run into Connecticut. So directly to the east of us is where this crane is looking. As the program progresses, you'll see seagulls flying about. This will tell you that it is actually a live tape, which is about the best that we can do for painting from life. Now I'm going to use the entire canvas to lay out this object. I'm going to put him slightly off center. I don't want him dead center. I'm going to try to do it slightly off center. But here is this graceful, beautiful piece which is 40 feet tall. Right there on one of the docks of Danforth's Inn in Port Jefferson. There is a beautiful, really beautifully symmetrical curve here in the neck, and the material that this is made with, and you would not know it just by looking at it. It is approximately 10,000, I believe that's the sum, pieces of tubular steel that have been secured together by the incredibly energetic efforts of this young sculptor, who is now on assignment in Japan to design and build an amusement park in Japan. And I believe that it's because this great heron was shown to the public during the op sale celebration in New York Harbor. This young sculptor took another mortgage out on his house, and he borrowed money from the bank, and he borrowed money from friends in order to put this work of art on a barge and float it to New York. And have it in the harbor during the celebration. I believe it was one of the great celebrations that New York is famous for putting on. As I lay this out, I think that you will probably agree that it is wise to eliminate the flagpole, which is directly to the left of this piece. Not that I don't like flagpoles, but I think it compromises the composition. We do not need another vertical. The pilings are going to do just fine for the verticals. And then the dock upon which this thing is resting, the amusing part is that when he moved it to Port Jefferson on a rental loan basis, he had to assemble the feet after he got here because they were so big he couldn't get it through his own driveway in Centerport, which is where this thing was constructed with a friend. It's an engineering feat, of course, to be able to have anything of that height, which is not a building, and to have it able to withstand winds and so on. Obviously, there's much more of a wonderful curve to that neck than what I have, so I'd better pay attention to the really beautiful lines that this thing has. The feeling that you get when you see this as you approach it is, of course, the first question is, what is that? And then as you see it, the aesthetics of it really begin to tell. And anybody who has any further questions about it, I can try to answer them. I have a blurb about him, and at the break I will get the blurb out of my bag and be able to give you a little bit more information than I have so far. The point is that this is a young sculptor who has done other very, very large bird figures in his technique. He has done an enormous pelican somewhere here on Long Island, and there was another one where he did, I believe, a different another type. But it's quite a wonderful piece, and I think that this is one of the exciting things about being able to go out there and find these motifs and then let you in on it. Here is another part of the very complicated bunch of floating docks that you'll find in Port Jefferson for the accommodation of the myriad boats that gather there in the summertime. Anybody who is a water person knows Port Jefferson Harbor is one of the favorite places on Long Island to moor on many different occasions, namely many times the 4th of July, and for the most part every single weekend in the summertime. So here we have a general layout of how I'm going to present this to you, and I'm going to work tonight with a palette knife, which seems to me like a very good technique to use when I'm doing something as simple as this composition. To attempt to do a detailed piece of 10,000 pieces of tubular steel would be a fool's errand, of course, and so I don't intend to do that. What I'm going to do is to show you how a nice, simple object such as this can fall into a wonderful composition just with the simple planes of color. Actually, what we have is a very monochromatic color scheme here with the cloudless blue sky, which I'm now mixing with some ultramarine blue, a touch of manganese blue, which is a lovely clear color, and my trusty quick-drying white. I'm going to make sure to give it enough of color so that the white bird is visible against the pale thing. It is a very mysterious looking piece because if the sky is very pale, you will find you'll have to try to distinguish this very ethereal looking figure. So I'm going to put the sky on with my palette knife. Here, this palette knife has got this pure color. It is a wonderful way of being able to keep your colors absolutely pure and clean, because you don't have to worry about paint getting caught in the hairs of a brush, which is the complaint many times of people who are just beginning to paint. And also, when you have finished with one color, you can wipe it off with one wipe of a cloth, or as I use, a paper towel, and you've got yourself a brand new clean instrument with which to put more very clear and pure color. If you have the desire to call, do so. It's 348-6800. This is the one chance. I'm on the air live once a month on the last Tuesday of every month. I have missed the last 2 months because the holidays got in the way. And this is the chance to, this is the opportunity to call me, and we can talk about, either talk about what I'm doing, or talk about what you're doing, or talk about painting in general. The discovery of things like this piece of work happens only if you're out there in the wild, as you might say. And the wilds of Port Jefferson this morning found me gawking and in tremendous admiration. The people at Danford's Inn, which is that nice, very beautifully situated restaurant on the harbor. And this is not a commercial for them. I'm just telling you about where you can find this piece. The Danford's Inn is right there on the harbor. It's a wonderful new building. It looks like an old one, but it's a new one within the past 10, 15 years. And it boasts a place where you can eat and look out onto the harbor from a myriad windows. So it's a lovely aesthetic experience, as well as a nice place to take friends and to show off our Long Island area, which of course is doesn't need much bragging. We have everything here that anybody could ever hope for as far as aesthetics. Unfortunately, many times the developers come in and kind of mess that sort of thing up, but there are pockets still on the island, all along the north and south shore and on the east end, that still have tremendous, beautiful spots, still wonderful, and still wonderful tourist attractions. The sky was slightly darker at the top, as usual, because of the atmospheric conditions. Good. So let me talk about the atmospheric conditions after I take this call. Hello there. Tell me your name, please.
Marilyn.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Marilyn.
Hi, Marilyn.
How are you? I enjoy your program very much, and I learn a lot from it.
Great.
Would you just tell me what you use to do your outline?
Oh, I use something that I call dirty turpentine.
And what does that consist of?
Just pure turpentine and a clean brush with a touch of any dark color. It doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't.
It can be brown, it can be black, it can be green, mauve. It doesn't matter as long as it's visible on whatever canvas you're working on.
Okay, wonderful.
And if you use it thin enough, don't use it just use it exactly like what I call it, dirty turpentine.
Yeah, a lot of turpentine.
Yeah, almost use the turpentine like water.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Marilyn.
And I enjoy you so much.
I'm so glad you called.
Thank you.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, as I say, the ferry boat lands, the ferry boat that runs the waterway between here and Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I'm sure that anybody who lives on Long Island knows about that ferry. It's one of the favorite pastimes. There was a time back at the turn of the century and in the early part of the 19th century where the ferry was the only means of getting to Connecticut, and people who were ill in Port Jefferson, Setauket, Stony Brook, and all these villages along the North Shore, when they became ill, they did not get taken to the hospital in Bridgeport by train, they went by boat. And so it was an extremely busy thoroughfare, and shopping took place on Saturday by people getting onto the ferry boat in Port Jefferson of a Saturday morning and going and shopping in Bridgeport and coming back in the evening, and that was a perfectly normal transportation behavior not that long ago. I had a friend, Kate Strong, who told me that when she was a girl, and that was at the turn of the century, she in fact would look forward to spending Saturdays in Bridgeport. And so if people think that that people who lived here a long time ago were stuck here, they weren't. They were very mobile. All right. I'm going to now travel on into the landmass here, which has got a wintry color. It is kind of mauve. It's kind of green. It's a little bit. It's got all sorts of what you might call funky colors, nothing colors, but they are definitely on the mauve tones. And I mix my colors here on this extra palette. Extra canvas rather, and I try to keep to mix the colors totally. I don't like to ever rely upon an accidental smear or stripe or striation or anything. I like to have the colors on pure. It's almost like a poster technique to have these colors as pure as possible. It's also this palette knife painting is a layering of the color. I'm putting it on in layers, as you can see, and sometimes the thicker the better. Here is also what you would call a very limited palette. That means that the colors are few, very few as a matter of fact. And in the wintertime, it's a pity that not more people will go out and paint in the wintertime, because the subtlety of this lack of color is one of the things that I find extremely interesting. These are very easy color schemes to live with. They don't jar you. They are subtle. They are also what I call polite colors for your decor in your homes, and you don't have to build a room around these colors. These colors kind of fit into any room. Oh, good. Let me take another call. Hello there. Tell me who you are.
Hi, my name is Carol Acker.
Yes, Carol.
Hi, I've watched you and enjoyed you for years. I want to compliment you on your choice of subject tonight.
Ah, do you know this piece?
Absolutely.
Isn't it stunning?
And you are doing an absolutely marvelous job.
Oh, well, thank you. Let's wait. Let's hope I can pull this off to the very end.
Well, I hope the Danfords Inn purchases it and has it hanging on their walls for everybody to enjoy.
Well, good, because a friend of mine, Naomi Solo, was there today, and she gave me the publicity piece on it and the thing that came out in the papers, because this bird got some publicity when it was first put up.
Yes, and they've also had a wonderful competition to name the bird.
And you know, I found out the name. Would you like to tell the audience the name if you know it?
Yes, it is. It's Hope.
Isn't that wonderful, especially that we have Hope so prominently in the news these days as the place from whence our 42nd president comes?
Exactly.
Well,
I won't distract you any longer because we're enjoying you, and everybody in Port Jefferson is cheering you on.
Good.
So
well,
thanks ever so much.
Thank you for calling, Marilyn. Marilyn?
Carol.
Carol, I'm so sorry.
Carol Acker.
Good. Carol Acker. I used to know a Laddie Acker. I don't know if he was related to you or not, but I knew Laddie for a while many years ago.
Absolutely. We're longtime residents here.
Yes, you are. Well, Port Jefferson is delicious. It's a lovely experience. There is a poet called, she's Robert White's wife, and she wrote a poem about Port Jefferson, and the first line of the poem about Port Jefferson is, her name is Claire White, and it reads, twice a week I dip down into Port Jefferson, which I think is a lovely term, because that's exactly what you do. You run along 25A going east, and suddenly there's that great dip that deposits you down into this lovely harbor.
Absolutely, and we're so glad that you arrived here. And took your way into town.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Carol.
Bye-bye now.
See you again. So, see, art and poetry is probably one of the nicer elements of the existence here on this planet. Without it, I just don't know where we'd be. At least I don't know where I'd be. And I think that everybody has to agree that art is a wonderful business maker, because I was told today by Naomi Solo that the tourists that have come to see this bird, that just endless numbers of tourists have come, any weather. They come when it's raining, they come when it's snowing or windy or dark or dismal, and it's lit at night. I admit I have not seen it at night. But if you go and have dinner right there on the harbor and the lights go on and this wonderful, ethereal, aesthetic-looking thing is shown to you under lights, it's got to be the dreamiest thing in the immediate area. There's no question about it. And I think that when you have been in on the inauguration ceremonies in Washington, where I was during that, you will agree that that was a rather stunning performance, and that the visuals of that inauguration and the performances in front of all the monuments and the statues and so on were remarkable. But we do have some aesthetic gifts right here. Ah, good, another call. Hello there.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. How are you gonna like put the curve in the neck?
How am I going to put it in?
Yeah.
You mean this one going like this?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to paint it in.
Oh.
I've painted around it because I wanted to make sure that the canvas was clean before I start putting paint over it.
Oh, because it, like in the real thing, it's more swerved, like.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I'm perfectly willing to change it and make it exactly like it ought to be. Tina?
Yes.
You have a very good eye. How old are you?
10.
Tina? How old?
10.
10. Excellent age. You're out of the single ones. You're into the double digits. And people are beginning to pay attention to what you say, right?
I like your pictures.
I like your voice. Call again, Tina.
Okay.
Thanks for the tip.
Okay.
I'll make it curvier. Bye. Okay. She is more than likely right, but as I say, anybody who has the gall to get on live television and do something without any tracing and without any without any cheating deserves to take lumps from all sorts of wonderful comments. Anyway, we have here a kind of a nice color scheme. I would not mind this in my environment at all, to have this simple and subtle color scheme. However, I'm now going to introduce something which is not jarring, but it's going to change the color scheme. This is all very subtle, and it's all very livable, and you can sort of picture things will look very well against this. But now comes the dramatic part of living near the water, and that is this. This wonderful ability to suddenly introduce, and this is why painting keeps me interested at all times, to introduce this dramatic and somewhat surprising blue. And it was brilliant today. The atmosphere helped it to not to have any atmospheric subtleties going on in the water. It was like an enormous aquamarine or a sapphire. The harbor was just a huge blue stone, a jewel of a stone today. And I must say that it's always intriguing to see this happen. That's probably why I paint all during the year, because the colors are never the same. And here's that other little touch of blue, which is over here, that sort of hugs this piling. And the pilings are the things that are the verticals of interest. I know that time flies, so before... Oh, another call. Let me take a call. Hello there.
Hi, my name's John. I'm calling from Rocky Point.
Oh, good.
Okay, my girlfriend and I paint often with your show and different shows. The only problem is our paint sets are acrylics.
Oh, dear.
Okay, to what extent does what you do, is it applicable to the use of acrylic paint?
No. No, tell me your name again.
It's John.
John. That's a simple name and I'll remember it.
Okay.
Acrylic does not apply to this kind of painting. It can't. And as you may have noticed, if you've ever watched me before, I do not use acrylics.
Right.
Ever. They dry too fast. I am unable to blend them to my satisfaction. And I don't find that there is enough brilliance in them.
Okay.
So, if you and your girlfriend, is that what you said?
Yeah, her name's Lainey.
Dwayne?
Lainey.
Laney. Oh,
Yes.
beautiful name. If you and Laney will put your money away and,
Right.
and buy oils and paint with oils, I think your whole bunch of new doors will open up for you in the business of painting.
Okay.
I do feel that you will find it not only fun, but far more interesting and much more adaptable to what you want to do.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for calling, John.
All right.
My best to Laney.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was from Rocky Point. I would love to have some people call me from much farther away than that, because I know that we are going way off into the wilds of Suffolk in the east and also to the wilds of Nassau in the west. And I'm sure that the people who have been flipping around all these months suddenly find a brand new ability to find something else on the screen, and that's me. And so I would really love to hear from some people who are calling, who can call from much further away. We're so happy to be, involved in a much more distant bunch of viewers, because we've been broadcasting in a radius of maybe 25, 6, or 50 miles or so. We're now much further along. Another call. Good. Let me take it. Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Greg. I'm calling from Smithtown.
Okay.
And I just wanted to, comment that I love the piece that you're doing. I saw its original, nesting place in East Northport, and when I first saw it, it was created by Mr. Bassine.
Yeah.
It was such a wonderful piece, and I at the time I said, boy, it was so very, very stark in its presentation, how he had it lit up. And I just popped on the television. I see you painting it, and you're doing a wonderful job. And to see it in its nesting place now is something that all Long Islanders should go out and get a chance to see for themselves.
Oh, it is. It's really astonishing. I mean, it's so arresting. You go down there, and all of a sudden, this thing just sort of hits you.
Right. You really. It almost draws you to it. You want to walk right up. You want to look right up. You want to get nice and close. And it's really, the closer you get, it's beautiful, and you will continually appreciate it for hopefully years on to come. It's a beautiful piece, and you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. And your name again?
My name is Greg Rothman.
Bert.
Greg.
Greg.
Right.
Okay. Well, Greg, how lovely of you to call, and I'm so glad that you were able to tell us more about it. You see, I came prepared to tell you about Mr. Bryce.
Mr. Bassine.
Bassine, right? He's from Argentina.
Yeah, originally yes.
Yeah.
And his lovely wife was a language teacher in the East Northport School District.
That's right.
And they created this wonderful piece, and he also had smaller pieces that he did. But for a matter of fact, he had a party once, and invited all the children, and I had the opportunity to see it for myself. And it was at night, and it was lit up, and walking up towards it, it was such a wonderful. That's a nice shot there. It is really quite beautiful. You have to really see it to appreciate it, but you're doing a wonderful job.
Well, thank you, Greg, for calling, and I'm so glad that you were able to do that, because, as I say, I was going to wait for the break to get Mr. Bassine's name from my blurb. I know I was told a few other things about him.
Right.
He's in Japan.
Yeah, right now he's in Japan, and his personality is as wonderful as his creation. He has a wonderful family.
Oh, great! He apparently this thing was seen by the Japanese either when he he floated it to New York on the barge,
Right.
and then he was commissioned to design a park and playground somewhere in Japan.
That's true.
And the reason that Port Jefferson has it is because there was a problem. What do I do with a four-story crane?
Well, I think Danforth's had a wonderful opportunity, and they made it available to all of us. So all of Long Island, go down to Port Jefferson, give yourself a treat, go down and see it, and it will be something that you really everyone can appreciate. It's wonderful.
Yes, it is indeed.
Right.
Well, I sure loved your calling me.
And thank you. You're
Thanks.
doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Thanks so
we
much.
We all appreciate it.
Good, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, you see, as I said before, beware if the artist is let loose in your environment. You're liable to do all sorts of things, and this is probably one of the more positive things that one can do for business. You cannot tell me that this kind of thing isn't much more valuable than putting up a mall. That presumably is put up for the developers to be able to make a lot of money because they think a lot of people are going to come to the mall. Actually, what happens is that the mall is put up, and artistically it offers virtually nothing to an environment except more traffic problems, unfortunately more pollution, and many times failed businesses in small towns. And the small towns do not deserve that. They deserve to remain in business, but they can't compete. So if the artists are let in and the things like this are brought into towns, they can only benefit. It can just be an enormous asset. And of course it encourages me to think that maybe I can produce something for a public sculpture. I've had some idea for many years of wanting to do a 20-foot iris in bronze and put it in front of course, where else? The Botanical Gardens in Washington. I have very large ideas. Yes, I'll take a break. Good. While I'm playing with this and thinking about what I'm going to jabber about next, let me take a break and I will come back. So don't go too far. That wasn't too long, and I was able to try to remember a little bit more about the history of this. That when Mr. Basine was commissioned by the Japanese to go out and do what they wanted to do, he sold his house, and of course he had this 40-foot piece that he had in his garden. Everybody who knows him and knew where he lived was familiar with it. But what do you do with it when you're going abroad? You certainly cannot take it. And the neighbors next door, can you believe this? The neighbors didn't want it in their garden. I mean, I would have latched onto that and hugged it had it been offered to me. But anyway, the neighbors didn't want it, and so there was a question of what do we do with it. And the plan came that that it go to this location on Port Jefferson Harbor, which means that it was brought here amid much fanfare and much ado and installed right there on this floating dock, right next to that flagpole, which of course I suppose has to be there with no point in taking it down. I think it's going to be here. This object, this heron is going to be here for about a year or two while Mr. Basine is in Japan. I understand there seems to be a feeling that there is a price on it, and I would not want to be held to it, but I was told that they think that it's somewhere around $50,000, which is of course, in my opinion, as an artist, given away, because it's the only one like it on the planet. It is aesthetically a remarkable piece to be able to inspire the feelings that it gives. I have seen pieces of public sculpture in New York and in Baltimore and in Washington and in Los Angeles that have cost upwards of $250,000 to $500,000, and you would not give them room in the last corridor of the subway, much less publicly. So this $50,000, it would seem to me like a wonderful project for the citizens of Port Jefferson and the environs of Long Island to try to find the $50,000 to, and that could be a project that we could all get involved in, to raise that money to be able to keep this heron in Port Jefferson Harbor, because it seems to me that this is the one place that it ought to remain forever. And so that is an idea that I'm putting forth. Greg can take it, run with the ball if he wants to. I'll be glad to participate in any kind of an arrangement to try to raise these funds, raffles or something. Maybe raffle this painting and start it that way. So all we need is to have a little bit of something to start it going. Maybe the Art for Open Lands can maybe have some branch of it this coming year to be able to figure out some way of acquiring this so that it can remain in Port Jefferson in perpetuum, or whatever the term is. So once again, off the top of my head, I've come up with a plan, and I have no idea how I'm going to implement it. But that's the way some ideas are born, just out of the blue, as it were. Out of the cerulean blue, as a matter of fact, because that's the color of the water here today. Out of the cerulean blue comes an idea. Well, the business of putting the crane into some kind of context of this painting is going to require a little bit of refining, because it has texture. As you can see, all those amazing rods, steel rods, are welded together somehow. And it needs to be refined. But as I say, when the Art for Open Lands takes place, I'm going to certainly have this as one of the pieces, either for raffling to start raising money to be able to buy it for Port Jefferson, and Port Jefferson deserves to have a present given to it by its citizens, especially by the people who can go and see this for nothing. You know, there was a time when you couldn't see things for nothing. You had to pay to see them. This one is out there in the open for all to see, free of charge. And maybe it would be a thought to be able to first of all, thank the artist who has produced this piece somehow. And the only way you can really thank an artist besides admiring the work is to purchase it. Poor Mr. Van Gogh never sold a painting in his life, and now they are being auctioned off, and they bring upwards of $18 million. Mr. Van Gogh never saw that money, and it would have made probably a tremendous difference. He might not have had such enormous psychological problems as he did if he had been able to be recompensed for his work and for the world to buy his work, and it didn't. So I'm not bewailing the fact that that Van Gogh did not sell his paintings, but it is always an astonishing fact to me that he was ahead of his time. That's why it was not. That's why he never sold them. It was just too soon. They did not understand the technique, and it took almost 100 years to understand it. Yes, good. We have another call. Yes, hello there.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Debbie.
Yes, Debbie.
I've been watching your show with my children for many years now. We enjoy watching you draw and paint on television. and we would like to know where we could purchase one of your paintings.
Okay. Tell me your name again.
Debbie.
Debbie. Well, Debbie, there is a show that takes place here at the cable studios every year called Art for Open Lands, and all of these paintings are for sale at that time.
Uh-huh.
I have a gallery in Front Royal, Virginia, which is where I'm living now and where I have my own private gallery. And if you write to me here at the station, I will respond by telling you how to get to my place. And if you ever decide to take a drive down to Virginia, I'm 62 miles west of Washington, D.C., and you might just find it a nice idea to come down.
Didn't you have a place in Setauket?
Yes, I did.
Gallery?
Yes, I did.
A few years back.
Yes, and I moved away.
Oh, all right. Well, it's nice talking to you.
Good. Call me again, Debbie, or go right here, and I'll send you my address and my hours at the gallery.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and we'll see you at the Art for Open Lands, maybe.
All righty.
Good.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, the electronic medium is wonderful because it's interesting. I have moved away here for a while ago, and when I come back and do the show and I wander around the villages and I see people, because I'm on the air 2 and 3 times a week, a lot of people don't even know I've left, which I think is really very amusing. And I find myself intrigued with the idea that you have an afterlife. Because of the television program. However, it's not an afterlife. I'm not gone yet, and I'm going to be back on the last Tuesday of every month for as often as I possibly can. It's quite a drive. I travel very close to 700 miles coming and going to get to do this, and of course it's because I sort of have a mission. I don't ever want to sort of abandon the people who have become interested in painting through my program to abandon them. So I think I will continue to do that, albeit that it takes a good effort. It's what they call in the vernacular a schlep. However, it's fun to do anyway, and I always like to be able to talk to the people who watch the program and who are getting something out of it. The platform upon which this bird is resting is also, I believe, stainless steel. I mean, not stainless steel. It's a steel structure, and that has been mounted on the dock. I hope that the audience will not mind if I do not include the flagpole, even though it gives it a sort of a nice quality. But if we were flying a flag, I think that I would include it. But it's not. It's wintertime, and I guess the yacht club or whatever it is that has the flag there has taken it in for the season. So. We'll just eliminate it. That's the power of the creator of a painting. You can put in or take off what you want at will. I'm using quick drying paints because it's a technique that I have found very satisfying when I'm out there in the wild, and I have to be able to do this layered painting over a short period of time. And when the paint dries enough to be able to put one color on top of another without picking it up, and anybody who's been painting knows what I'm talking about, that when paint is too wet, it picks color up as soon as you hit it, and then you get what I call a bloody mess. So these quick drying paints are really a nice answer to it. And here is the underneath part of the dock. Now I'm reducing all of these shapes to very simple forms. This is what I call planes of color. It is a form of abstract painting, but it's still recognizable. So do with it what you will. It is not exactly what you might call entirely abstract, but it has eliminated a lot of detail, which is the essence of abstract painting. So. When you see that if it works, if you can pull it off, and if people believe what you're doing, then the texture that is gained by the application of this extremely heavy paint is very appealing to a lot of people. They love the texture and the thickness of it. I went to I told an episode about my visiting the National Gallery of American Art in Washington a few weeks ago. I said it on my other show, and I'll just repeat it again for emphasis, that there are paintings there by American painters, wonderful spontaneous pieces with tremendous canvases. I mean, the size of the average wall in somebody's house or even in somebody's gallery, it is paintings, huge paintings with extremely thickly applied paint, and it's really very intriguing. And I find myself drawn to do that nice, every once in a while, to do that wonderful application of extremely heavy impasto, and that's the term. It's impasto color, and it gives a feeling to it, which is just as valid, I think, as working with a brush, and sometimes has even a little bit more mystery. The mystery of this piece is wonderful. It is so ethereal, and I understand also from my having fooled around with Japanese painting and studying it very slightly, that the Japanese, the crane is the symbol, is their symbol of fertility and happiness, and well, you name it, the crane is revered. They're sacred birds, and they have studied their mating habits, their dances. There are paintings all over the Japanese art history of the crane, nesting and dancing and decorating their screens, decorating their fabrics, their furniture, their houses, their parks, and so on. So the crane is a symbol in Japan and in the Orient of some very special emotional things, and that may be why Mr. Bassin has been invited by the Japanese to probably do another crane out there. This is a very Japanese or Oriental looking piece. And so the introduction of this into a landscape, this could be any harbor in the Orient. I went to Korea a few years ago, and I found that the landscape is very similar to some of Long Island, oddly enough, especially when the North Shore like this that produces this high cliff. The South Shore, of course, is as flat as you know it is, but there is a strange quality about the atmosphere on Long Island at certain times of year, which gives everything a somewhat Oriental look, and it's rather intriguing to think about that. And the presence of this piece of sculpture adds to that tremendously. At least in my opinion, it does. I'll be interested to see if anybody will actually go and seek this out and see if they can get the same reaction that I've gotten and that John got, who called us, and Marilyn, I believe, called and talked about how fortunate Long Island is to have this piece here. Well, the artist will do it, you know. We may be a little bit nuts, and we have dirty hands, and we have paint all over our clothes, and we certainly don't call what you might live what you might call a structured existence. But every once in a while, we come with something pretty funky, like this piece, and I think everybody's glad that we're around with our maybe less than admirable habits, such as in my house, there's almost not one single item that doesn't have some kind of paint on it, much to the distress of a lot of people who recoil in horror at paint. Anyway, I'm jabbering on away at you. I'm afraid the time is going to be running out. The dock, of course, is incidental to this composition. What I find I have done is that I've made this much too dark, and it's much too green, and it isn't really actually accurate enough for it to please me. But what has happened is that I have to put the eye in. Now this crane has a wonderful eye. I'm not sure what it's made of, and it has a lovely texture also. But if I can sort of get an eye in pure white up in this pale gray area, then the subtlety will be okay. The eye is quite brilliant. I'm not sure that it'll pick. If I wanted to be that to point out even more, I'd have to make that grayer. So let me put a little bit more gray in the head and see if I can get the eye to shine, because when they were installing this bird, I hear that there were comments from all sorts of people on the docks and on the streets and out there in the water, and there were people saying, no, you have to have him facing west, and you have to have him facing north, and you have to have him this, and so on. And everybody was giving their opinion of how to do it. And one little girl said, do it so that I can see the eye. And so here is the eye, which is, of course, there, that's more. It's a brilliant, nicely, it's quite bright as when you see it. And there. Now, so I'm going to stop jabbering about this and try to finish it, and then tell you a little bit about what is projected. I'm going to be coming Oh, here's another call. Good. Well, that saved me from that one because I can tell you about the coming, what I'm going to do later. Hello there. Tell me your name.
Yeah, hi, Pat. This is Shirley from Middle Island.
Yes, Shirley.
Hi, I've talked to you before. I was just wondering, will you be having any workshops?
Oh, no, I wish I could, but I could not. First of all, I no longer have a studio here.
Uh-huh.
And I have a studio down in Front Royal, Virginia, but I don't expect you to come 325 miles to a seminar.
I wish I could.
Yeah. Well, the mountains are wonderful, and it's a lovely visit, and you're invited to come to my gallery anytime, but I'm not having any seminars, no.
Oh, okay. You talked to my granddaughter before, Tina.
Yes.
And, she has called, I think, a dozen people so far to have them look at
Well,
your
bless
show.
little Gina. Tell her to call some people in Montauk. We want to hear from the East Enders.
Okay, I'll do that. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Okay, so what is projected is we are going much further east and west with this system. And that means that we are now able to go into forays in what might be called at one time more distant lands here on Long Island. So I'm going to be able to go and find scenes and places and motifs and things to paint that are further afield than we have gone before. Now there is I don't know whether or not your monitor is showing the details of this. I don't know whether or not it can, but those, the rods are so beautiful. They give such a texture of feathers. I mean, the man is a sculptor of enormous talent to be able to figure out that the use of those steel rods are going to give the impression of feathers on such a huge scale. I mean, we talk about Michelangelo having done that Sistine Chapel. I think artists that get involved in huge projects are just heroic. They are monumental problems of how to put these things together. Not just how to get rid of them when you're moving to Japan, but how do you put them together in the first place? He had an assistant, and I'm not sure that I remember the name, but I promise you the next time I'm on at the end of February, I'm going to have the name of the man who assisted him in putting it together. And if there's anybody in Huntington or in Centerport watching this program, please call me and tell me the name of the man that worked with him on this work. I had it, and then of course in the chaos of going on the air, I unfortunately mislaid it, and I'm relying upon my memory. All right, maybe this is my call from Huntington. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm not your call from Huntington.
That's all right. I like it just as well.
I was just wondering how you learned to paint so beautifully with a palette.
Knife.
Yes.
You know what? It scared me half to tears when I first started it and didn't know how to begin.
Because I've tried it because I was painting a picture of one of my friends, and I tried it, but I couldn't do it.
Well, what you did, first of all, was to pick too difficult a subject matter to begin with. You know, if you're trying to paint a portrait, I've tried to paint a portrait of myself with a palette knife, and it was extremely difficult and not very successful, because there's too much need for detail to make a portrait resemble the person.
Oh.
However, when you do something which is not quite as demanding in detail as a portrait is, I think that if you remember to keep your colors clean and to continually wipe your palette knife and to just experiment. You know, I mean, I don't think, as I said before, I don't think there are any lessons given in this technique. But I do feel that you can, if you're interested in it, you'll develop your own technique.
Well, you paint beautifully.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, when am I going to see some of your paintings?
Well, I was painting a picture right now.
Oh, well, I can't see it because you don't have a camera in your house.
Oh, well, not right now, but...
You know that's coming. Do you know that they're supposed to be able to get a telephone with a TV so that when you call me, when they have that invented, I'll be able to see what you're doing right then?
That would be perfect.
That would be funky, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you called.
Thank you for telling me how you painted with your knife.
Well, I didn't really tell you much of anything. I kind of copped out. But, you know, I've never been taught formally either. I've never had a lesson in my life. And so whatever I do, I've done with my own experiments.
Well,
and I suppose that that's what I would probably advise you to do.
You paint very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The forthcoming, I'm going to be here at the end of February. If we have a tremendous clobber of snow between then and now, I am really hoping sincerely to be able to get some snow paintings, because snow paintings that we have done before, I believe there's one here. This is a winter scene from Setauket last year. There's a winter scene down there of West Meadow Beach with snow all over the beach. And there's well, that's about it for here. But snow paintings are wonderful. They teach you a lot of things about color. And they teach you a lot of things about getting out there and being so dedicated to the idea of doing a painting that you will actually get out there in the wintertime and do it in that environment. If you don't get to feel what it must have been like for the masters, the people in the early days that did paint snow scenes and everything, and heavy weather scenes, then you don't really, then you really haven't sort of experienced the business of being a landscape painter out there in the open. Copying pictures doesn't do anything. Copying pictures is a waste of time. It really is. And so getting out there and doing it is the point. And it's much more fun than I can possibly describe, so I would suggest that you do that. There's 4 minutes left. Oh, and a phone call. Okay, hello there. Tell me your name.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Scott from Valley Stream.
Hello, Scott.
How are you?
I'm fine.
I just want to say, first off, you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I was just curious. I tuned in a little bit late. I was just curious how you get the paint so thick.
Well, you just pick it up. I mean, you just pick it up thick. First of all, it's very thick paint, because I think you may not have heard me mention what kind of paint I'm using. I'm using a Grumbacher product called MG's Quick Drying White.
Oh, I see.
And when it comes out of the tube, it is already thick, and it is actually impossible to spread with a brush. You have to use a knife. And it's available in all the art stores, and if you wanted to experiment with it, it's called MG's Quick Drying White.
I certainly will.
Good. Do you paint?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful.
I was also curious how you got the background, the sky.
Yes.
So it seems to fade from dark to light, going from up to down. Did you use the same paint?
Yes. Yes, I used the same paint, but I mixed the pale blue completely. I did not use any streaks and everything, and the pale blue went on completely, and then the darker blue went at the top, and I blended it as I went. There is a certain texture to it, but the overall illusion is that it does blend from dark to light.
Outstanding.
It's 2 colors. It's the pale blue and it's the darker blue.
Right.
Slightly, just blended. Oh, buy yourself a palette knife. You'll have the best time.
I certainly will.
Yeah, good.
Thanks very much.
Well, thanks for calling.
You're welcome.
All right. So, as the kids say, all right. 2 minutes. Oh, dear. Well, there's much to do in 2 minutes except that tell you that I'm hoping for the snow scene, not necessarily a snow to bog me down in traffic as I try to get back to Virginia tomorrow, but a snow scene so that I can get out and paint it, and then we can talk about the challenge of painting in the weather. I have always painted in the weather. I used to have a great big car, a checker, which was a cab, and I bought it and I was able to make tea inside my car. It was such a big one, and so I would go out and paint snow scenes and have the best time, because nobody else in the world is around when that's happening, and there you are all by yourself recording the world in one of its more aggressive moods. Well, speaking of aggressive moods, this has put me into a wonderfully calm mood about this bird, because not only have I been able to kind of have hands-on experience with this fellow, but also to be able to tell you about it. And I would say that if Port Jefferson is jumping tomorrow or the weekend or any time soon, I will take personal responsibility for all that activity, because I think that you know, the Empire State Building is great, but it's too bloody far away, and it's also too hard to get to, and yet can't park and so on. This way, you can go, and oh man, it is a wonderful experience. So, here we are, once again, trying to bring to you the wonders of the world, and also a couple of pieces of information that you might be able to use in your own existence, either as a painter or just as somebody who is fortunate enough to live in this wonderful place called the world, and also called Long Island, to be specific. So the mountains are great, but the water is sometimes greater. Here we have a nice composition of a perfectly wonderful piece of work. I'm glad that you tuned in, and I like the phone calls, and I hope that next month when I come on, there'll be even more calls and maybe some reporting from the people who have gone and followed my advice and gone and seen the great bird. Good night, and thanks again for watching.